Moving on to, of course, the main event of the weekend. Raider Jim, I don't know. I looked over some of the other cards. Nothing really jumped out to me. I don't know if you wanted to touch on.
Preakness is the biggest race.
Yeah.
Everything else is pretty much 100,000, 150,000 here and there. Even at Santa Anita. Santa Anita is kind of just a low Saturday this weekend. So no, I didn't see anything that
dive right
was
in.
jumping out at me.
Yeah, so obviously, as I mentioned earlier, Mage will, of course, continue its run for the Triple Crown, this, of course, being the second jewel at Pimlico. However, it will be running against wholly new competition. No Derby horses are going to be running here in the Preakness. So, Raider Jim, I will pass it off to you. What are your thoughts on the running of the Preakness Stakes? I'm going to step away for a split second to let my cat out before it rips the door off of the hinges. But the floor
Here we go. It's good. Preakness, the second jewel of the Triple Crown, 1 3/16 mile in the dirt. Chance of showers. Now, that didn't say what percentage of chance when I was looking at the track. That would change some of this. Definitely change it if it turned really muddy, but I don't know that it's going to change it enough to where people aren't going to continue to make Mage the favorite in the race. Right now, you're getting 8-5 on Mage. Quite honestly, I don't know that Mage is going to come out of the gate fast enough to make it around the track and keep the lead. I think the horse can be taken down. There's three horses that I think can take down Mage in this race. One of those is National Treasure out of the post position. Bob Bapper, John Velasquez in the saddle, currently at, I believe it's 4-1. Pardon the glare, I'm going to have to put them on. National Treasure, 4-1, riding off the rail. There is also on the outside, on the 8th position, First Mission out of Kentucky, Luis Saez. Brad Cox is the trainer on that one. Also has probably got a chance to take out Mage in this one and ruin the run for the Triple Crown. There is also, I believe that the 7th horse, Blazing Saddles, although hasn't performed up to par or up, met everybody's expectations of late, I think Blazing Sevens has what it takes to make a real run for it. Got Irad Ortiz in the saddle, being trained by Chad Brown, so you can't go wrong on that combination. If I was going to put anything in there as more of a long shot, if you will, I would give a look to Steve Asmussen's horse, Red Route 1 at 10-1. It's great value, and he himself made the comment earlier this week, I can win the Preakness, I just can't win the Derby. And I guess he laughed when he was telling the story, and he says, I actually stand there before the Derby starts and go, well, what's going to happen? And so he kind of like pokes fun at himself, but he's a great trainer and he has won the Preakness. Watch for Red Route 1 at 10-1. Good value to go in underneath. And then just again, betting from my heart, I'm going to have a couple dollars on the side that this horse is going to come in. The hometown favorite. It's more of the area favorite there. Coffee with Chris out of Maryland. And so they're going to probably hear a lot of people might put money on that at 20-1. Is it going to finish in the money? There's a chance it could. It could come in and get that show position. Don't be surprised if it does. Sometimes it's just one of those stories where it's good. Your choice if you want to put it underneath on your card, but mine are going to be National Treasure, Mage, First Mission, and Red Route 1.
Yeah, not the exact. Didn't turn in the same homework on this one. But obviously we got to start with Mage.
Also, what things?
15-1 for Mage in the Derby, and obviously got the job done. Now 8-5. I think personally, I think it's too low of a price with some of these other horses that are running, which is great in terms of the value side of things, kind of the opposite of what we saw in the Black Eyed Susan. The other horse that's kind of on my top tier list is that 8 horse, First Mission. I think it's probably going to end up being the best value. Now, there is a chance here that maybe some money comes in Preakness Day, and maybe we see First Mission as the favorite. Then that kind of changes a little bit of things for me. But at 5-2 morning line, I think it has every opportunity to go right after that 8-5 Mage in terms of the favorite. It has the highest buyer score of any horse not named Mage in this race. It ran a 98 in the Lexington Grade 3 last time out back in April at Keeneland. So this is a horse that has plenty of speed, plenty of consistency. I think depending on how the odds shake out, First Mission may be a horse that I can see straight value in there. Some of the other horses I'm keeping an eye on, the 6 horse is Perform. I think a ton of value here for a horse that has consistent speed. This horse can win starting from the back. This horse can win kind of up with the front runners, can do whatever it kind of needs to do, or at least get in the money. Has been in the money 4 out of 7 runs. Only twice in the winner's circle, definitely enough to kind of give you a little bit of pause, but at 15-1, I think that's an opportunity to, figure things out. I will say it took this horse a long time, probably one of the longer times of any of the horses to break its maiden. It was just 2 races ago in March that it broke its maiden, but it's won 2 races since, and it's constantly improved over the past 3 races up to an 85 last time out in April. So I do look at Perform as a horse that possibly could get a little bit of underdog value from me. Raider Jim, or you talked about Blazing Sevens. You look at this horse's card, the only time this horse doesn't win a race is when either Forte or Tapit Trice are coming in first. And guess what? Neither of those horses are running here, so it's 6-1. I'm with you. I really do like Blazing Sevens. And is it possibly, fortune or destiny that this horse draws post position 7? I don't know, but that's something also to think about. That's a nice little bit of luck if you're superstitious. That's something to keep an eye on. But National Treasure is kind of in that third tier for me. 4 out of 5 runs have been in the money, but only one of those finished in the winner's circle. But in terms of handicapping, figuring out who's going to be in the lead heading into that first turn, or getting out of or heading to the backstretch, I think it's between National Treasure, the 4-horse Coffee with Chris, and then the 8-horse First Mission. I think it's just going to be depending on how fast they do want to set that pace. And that does bring me to the 2 that you talked about as well, the 4 and the 5 Coffee with Chris. I just wonder if Rodriguez can kind of find that middle ground of not, just jumping out to a way too fast of a pace and kind of fading late, because this race is pretty much 1.25 miles. It's 1 mile and 3/16, essentially 1.25 miles. So it's going to be a long race, obviously the longest one we've seen Coffee with Chris run. So the distance will be very interesting, or at least the pace, I should say, will be interesting. But Red Route 1, I think with Joel Rosario, Steve Asmussen, that kind of experience, we're going to see something very interesting. And this is a horse that's the exact opposite of Coffee with Chris. This is a horse that's going to come from the back if they have it their way. You talked about the rain. It's going to be really difficult to come from the back if we do see rain, if we do see some sort of weather like that. So keep that in mind. But Red Route 1, I like your kind of handicap on that as well. There's a lot of value here. I think the top 2 are definitely, First Mission and Mage for good reason. But I think underneath, there's a lot of place show bets for me that I'm going to essentially have to whittle down from probably 6 to 3, and then maybe build some exactas and trifectas other ways too. But this is a race that through different exotics, you can throw an umbrella on, and I think you can feel okay heading into it. But I think it's going to be a fantastic race this Saturday, and who knows, maybe, I tell you what, I'll say this right now. If Mage wins this Preakness, I would say Mage is maybe the biggest or the most surprising Triple Crown contender I've seen in my lifetime. That's not a disrespect to Mage. It's just a lot of the horses that we've seen heading to Belmont to race for the 3rd jewel of the Triple Crown have been highly touted horses. And, with all due respect again to Mage, that's definitely not the route that horse is run. But still got to get through 7 big-time competitors. And then, of course, the Belmont, you're going to... I would not be surprised if we do see Forte running in the Belmont. The Belmont's kind of the one a lot of these horses really do want to go out and win if they don't win the Derby. But
so here's my question.
Yeah, go for it.
Here's my question. As we talked about the entries for the Black-Eyed Susan Stakes, etc., only 8 entries in the Preakness. Why is only 1 horse here from the Kentucky Derby? Does it then put to the question on the table, which I think is there in a lot of circles? Do they look at restructuring how the Triple Crown is run? Do you give more than 1 week between race 1 and race 2 for the Triple Crown? Do you do 1 race a month instead? The first Saturday in May, the first Saturday in June, the first Saturday in July? Is it because they're not, especially with the scrutiny of the injuries and the mishaps that are taking place, people are people are going to say these horses are stressed. If something happens to Mage, God forbid, on the weekend, that's the first thing that's going to be said. Well, you can't take a horse and run him that hard on the 5th and then take him out and run him that hard on the 19th. What is your opinion on that?
That is such a good but tough question to answer, at least for myself, because the allure of winning the Triple Crown is the fact that you won these 3 races in 7 weeks, 2 months. You win these 3 races in 2 months. And it's that kind of badge of honor. But as we started off, are we going to seriously sacrifice these horses, health, so that we don't have to put an asterisk by some of these? Because I do think for Secretariat and American Pharaoh and the horses that have won the Triple Crown, if we do go 1 race a month, there does have to be a bit of a, hey, under new structure, which I still think is very tough to do, win 3 races in 3 months. Sure. I still think that's very tough. But it is that kind of allure, and I look at it kind of like the Stanley Cup playoffs. It's such a grind. These guys would probably love to have 2 or 3 days off in between, but that kind of takes away from it. Now, I think we have to, and I think Pimlico, and we have seen in the last, let's say, 5 to 10 years, essentially the Derby runs, and then whoever, the big horses that don't win immediately go, okay, we're looking at Belmont. And then maybe 3 or 4 of the horses that were maybe, 6th, 7th, 8th go, hey, we got a chance to go, not steal a purse, but we got a chance to go get a big purse in the Preakness. And we've seen kind of smattering of 3 or 4 or 5 Derby contenders go straight to the Belmont, while some of the underdogs will go to the Preakness and see how that goes. But I think Pimlico is going to eventually say, hey, look, we got to figure something out, because they want to make their money. This is their big weekend. Pimlico, Preakness weekend, that's the big moneymaker for them. So I do think if we start to see kind of a lack of money being put into Pimlico, because once again, that's the biggest thing that drives horse racing. That's what drives change. I hate to say it, but it's money. If Pimlico starts to look at their bottom line on Preakness Day and can say, hey, this is because we're only having essentially the Derby winner run, and who knows, in 2 or 3 years, maybe there's a horse in connections that go, you know what? I know we won the Derby, but we don't get a bonus for the Triple Crown. We're going to let this horse chill, and we'll see you in Belmont. And then what happens? Because that is the worst possible scenario for Pimlico, and I think horse racing in general for those. And I'm not even sitting here saying that would be a bad decision for those connections to make, because 2 races in 3 weeks is, and 3-year-olds as well. It's asking a lot, and that question I think needs to be answered. And I do believe in the next 3-4 years we are going to see an extension, or at least spread these races out, and I have no problem with that. And I hope that no one else does, at least at the decision-making level. Once again, if we do have to put a bit of an asterisk on any other Triple Crown horses, I don't think it demeans them too much, but at the same time, it is an acknowledgement that, okay, back then it was a little tougher, but look, everything back in the day was a little tougher, right? Technology, everything. Right. You go back all the way to caveman times. I mean, they're hunting and gathering. Over here, we're on the computer in our free time. That's how we deal with things. So I think eventually that will get changed, and I think it should, although I do think it will. The Triple Crown will lose a little luster, but that's okay. I will still be watching. I know Radar Jim will still be covering it. It will still be a great event when the horse does win it. But it's a great question, but I do think that it does have to be spread out. What do you think?
I think given what's happening with the safety, the focus on safety, the spotlight of the accidents, the increase, and again, if you start getting more activists involved or the government involved, then it's going to have no choice but to find some way to adjust the calendar, even if it's make it 3 weeks, not 2 weeks between the races. I still think that possibly the best solution that might appease some people would be that first Saturday. And then, though, as I say that, I'm not the guy in the war room with all the big boards for every racetrack from West Coast to East Coast and say, okay, so now we're going to have to adjust our stakes, our handicap races that are big to us in June and July. and it's a fiasco. It can be done, but it's going to be some work.
Well, it all comes back to that uniformity. Everyone essentially not only getting on the same page, but at the very least reading out of the same book. And just to kind of put it into perspective, and I'm glad we brought this up because I forgot to kind of mention this with Coffee with Chris. Another thing that I am kind of a little bit of raised eyebrow. This is a 3-year-old that is about to run its 13th race. And even just for an example, this horse ran essentially going back to 2022, October 14th, November 12th. Now a little bit of a overlap here, December 3rd and then December 30th. But this year, January 21st, February 18th, March 18th, April 15th. That is essentially one race a month. And that
Right.
is the essentially the most hardest working horse in the Preakness. And it's running once a month. And we're asking these horses to run twice in the same month, eventually run 3 races in 2 months. I think, I do think it's time to kind of sit back and figure out a way. And I do think, look, you got to move whatever, maybe we give the Black-Eyed Susan because we're not seeing the Kentucky Oaks horses running in the Black-Eyed Susan. Maybe the Black-Eyed Susan moves to Saturday on Preakness Day and we push it back. And now all of a sudden Pimlico gets 2 big weekends.
Right.
Now I'm sure the purse will have to be bumped up in the Black-Eyed Susan, a lot of other things, but I think first and foremost, the horse's health has to be paramount. And no unnecessary burden on these horses if it can be avoided. And I think this could be avoided. It'll take some grinding, and not everyone's going to be happy, but you know what? That's life. You're not ever going to make everyone happy. And if you do, someone's lying to you. But with that being said, time for some final thoughts. Raider Jim, the floor is yours.
Yeah, a couple from me, and that is, I just want to share something that I heard earlier today. There's a great, long time handicapper out there. His name should be familiar to a lot of people, Michael Pizzola, and he had this to say today as he was talking about betting and handicapping. He says, "What's really great is to be a Monday morning handicapper. It's always good. You can sit there and you can say, oh, this is why this happened, or I bet this, blah 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 blah." And he says, Monday morning handicapping is great. There's only one problem with it. You need to bet before the race runs. So it makes you less of an expert when you do it. So I just thought it was a fantastic thing. Look up Michael Pizzola online. He's a pretty interesting listen and a pretty good read too. He writes very, very well. And then my closing remark is the same I did last night on our NFL podcast. And that is expressing my appreciation, respect, and condolences to the Brunson family out of Nevada. As many of you may know, probably the greatest poker player of our time, Doyle Brunson, Texas Dolly, passed away this past weekend. 89 years old, 10-time World Series of Poker champion, won it back-to-back. Previously was going to be an educator until he found out what he was going to get paid by being an educator. So he decided, what the heck, I've been putting myself through school, playing cards. I'm going to keep playing cards. Looks like he made the right decision. To the Brunson family, my condolences, our condolences from first off the bench. And to you, big man upstairs, Texas Dolly, thank you for everything you did for the game.
Amen. And we'll echo that as well as I did last night. And my final thought, I'm actually going to give some credit here to Raider Jim because he was the individual who brought this to my attention. But I'm going to talk about a gentleman named Ken Rudolph. I would say he was employed at FanDuel. However, he is formally employed at FanDuel as he came out and essentially on Twitter said horse racing needs to stop pretending and just be what it is. It's a great combo between WWE, reality TV, sports, with a healthy dose of BS on the side. It's a great game. Cheating is part of it. Death is part of it. Losing is part of it. Winning makes it all worthwhile. All right. So it's a great combo of WWE, reality TV, sports, with a healthy dose of BS on the side. WWE, no one's died in the ring. Well, at least wrestling-wise, there are Owen Hart situations. I know that. But reality TV, that's not life or death. Sports, sometimes I might think it is, but it's not life and death. We have accidents. Damar Hamlin, obviously, that was a situation where it was life and death. But that's very few and far between. We saw 7 horses have to be euthanized this past week just so that this guy can pat himself on the back because he picked the right horse. That's what his mindset is. Now, we have some really backwards thinking in this world, this country, everywhere. And we can't fight it all, and it's fine. But when you go out and you say something like that on a public platform, and FanDuel over the last 5 to 10 years has gotten very involved in horse racing, and they did the right thing and pretty much immediately no suspension without pay, but no, you're done, you're an idiot, get out of here, we need to wash our hands of the situation.